So you get a bit of a 2-for-1 in this session. We have two presentations, and once again, as you are all veterans now, you will have a chance to ask questions to our presenters at the end of this session. Our first presenter is Dr. Anna Takina, who is going to be talking to us about something called summer melt. If you don't know what that is, you're about to find out about that. This session will be followed by Dr. L. Ting, who will be talking to us about U.S. direct admissions experiment. So let's, without any further ado, let's pass it over to Anna, who will give her presentation, and then we will pivot over to Elle.
Thanks, Mike. This session is devoted to climate change. Elle and I are going to overview two practices that are changing the climate in the US for prospective post-secondary students. One topic is summer melt, and the other approach is direct admissions. So each model is distinct, and each of us is going to focus on just one. So I'll start and speak about the summer melt. With rising temperatures in British Columbia, everybody may be melting away in summer, but this presentation is focused specifically on post-secondary applicants. Since the early 2010s, the scope of the summer melt and the activities to mitigate it have been investigated in multiple American studies. This research has become more relevant for institutions with decreasing enrollments, especially during and after COVID-19 pandemic. The research shows that summer melt often affects disadvantaged students and explores specific measures to support them. As the Council's, the BC-CAT mandate highlights work on improving access to post-secondary, the findings of this research can be helpful for that mission. What is the summer melt? Summer melt happens when college-intending students fail to enroll at all in the fall after high school graduation. So this is the definition given in one of the founding early research on the summer melt. And I would like to highlight several aspects of this definition. One is college-intending students, and that means that these students have applied and were accepted to a post-secondary institution and also applied for financial aid if that was applicable. Some of those students also indicated intention to enroll in post-secondary on a high school exit survey. Students have graduated from high school but melted if they did not attend, not enroll in post-secondary the following fall. This graph shows the so-called post-secondary admissions funnel that follows how students enroll in post-secondary, from prospects to inquiries, applicants, accepted students who placed a deposit, and those who are enrolled. So summer melt happens at two stages possibly. Here, after the students accepted the offer, and sometimes they may also have paid a deposit, but still have failed to get enrolled in the fall after high school graduation. And there are certain factors that exacerbate summer melt, and also strategies that post-secondary institutions can employ to minimize it. How many prospective students experience summer melt? Out of college intending students, it is estimated that 10 to 40% may be experiencing summer melt. And this data is from 3 large school districts in the states, in Massachusetts, Texas, and Georgia, and a national longitudinal study in the US. And most disadvantaged students are the most susceptible to summer melt. For example, summer melt affected 37% of low-income college-intending graduates in one study, and only 7% of other college-intending graduates. Underrepresented and racialized groups of students, first-generation students, are also very susceptible to summer melt. And that also implies the students with lower achievement, with lower grades. In recent studies, it has been shown that summer melt was higher overall in the pandemic, up to 20 to 30% overall. There are several factors that may imply higher summer melt. And the identified factors for students experiencing summer melt are quite often similar to barriers to transitioning to post-secondary in general. Some of the major ones identified in research include financial aid application or financial constraints. For example, students may be unaware of additional fees beyond the tuition, such as cost of housing, books, and student activity fees. So these come as surprise and may cause changes in the plans. Students also lose access to high school counselors in the summer, and thus lose access to specialized knowledge, even though their family and friends may be supportive of their post-secondary application. Another one is forms related to the logistics of becoming a student. These could also contribute to summer melt. These steps would include housing applications, medical and vaccine history, visa or residency status, test scores, and others. Quite often, especially for students with limited internet access, navigating online admissions portals can be difficult. Also, the last but not the least is the changing personal circumstances that are also a factor. It can be moving, it can be death in the family, it can be procrastination, or summer work may turn into long-term employment for some students. As one study sums it up, institutional calendars, family and peer issues, college knowledge, cultural and community norms, and academic history are all factors for the summer melt. What do institutions do to reduce summer melt? Multiple sources mention staying connected with the students throughout the summer as the key successful measure to reduce summer melt. And the connection could be maintained through several methods, such as text messaging, counseling, or student peer mentors. Another way is changing applications, reviewing applications and application processes, and simplifying those, for example, the language or the steps to take, could support many applicants. These are approaches that post-secondary institutions can take. Some sources also highlight steps that can be taken by high school staff who want to support their student transitioning to post-secondary, but I am not going to cover those here. So let me just focus on how effective post-secondary measures were in those studies. Several studies assessed the efficacy of measures aimed at reducing summer melt. And this table shows the estimate cost per student and the resulting increase in enrollment by measure. In the majority of the studies, no matter how much the cost was per student, the enrollment increased by roughly 5%. It appears that the measures worked best for low-income first-generation students and for students going into four-year post-secondary institutions. That is, the institutions that offer a baccalaureate degree. Another recent finding was that PSI-branded chatbots could increase the enrollment by 22%. That varies by institution. There were several institutions that have implemented those chatbots, but it was unclear from that study whether that was measured for college intending students only, as of the summer melt definition, or for all applicants. The cost-benefit analysis of all those measures suggested that simplifying application process, and that includes financial aid application and text messaging, are inexpensive options to increase transitioning to post-secondary and also retention. So here in the colder Canada, are students melting too? And there are no Canadian studies on summer melt per se that I have been able to identify. And there are two caveats here. I only looked for publicly available studies, and there were none of those. And this absence can also be explained by the difference in terminology between US and Canada. I have heard that BC institutions have assessed the extent of students who accept offer of admission but do not enroll. So institutional studies are the best knowledge on the topic at the institutional level. So, and if we talk about Canadian sources typically discuss transition to post-secondary, not summer melt per se. For example, a study from Ontario tracked transition to post-secondary for 2 high school cohorts in Toronto by linking high school data and the data from Ontario University's Application Center and Ontario College Application Service. However, the absence of post-secondary data in that study does not allow for conclusions about the possible summer melt. In BC, Student Transitions Project, STP, tracks immediate and delayed transitions of high school graduates to BC public post-secondary education. And students in the immediate transition category enroll in post-secondary education within 1 year of high school graduation. So this definition makes this group the closest to the summer melt definition in the US studies. It is currently not possible to estimate the extent of the summer melt, that is the proportion of accepted students who did not enroll in the fall in BC, because the STP does not contain data on student application status. But there is potential for a BC system level study that would link STP data with the data from the application platform, Education Planner BC. So this may be a prospect for the future, and will certainly add some cool and hopefully reduce the melt. And this concludes my presentation. Stay cool. And I'm passing the floor to Elle, and we'll be happy to answer questions later.
Thank you, Anna, for that presentation. Just as a reminder to everybody, Anna and Elle are standing by to take your questions. I can already see there's some questions in the Q&A and the chat. Please keep those coming because we are going to pivot over to there in just a minute. For now, though, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Elle Ting, who is BCCAT's research officer, who is going to tell us more about the U.S. direct admissions experiment. Take it away.
Thanks, Anna, and welcome again to JAM 2023, everyone. I'm Elle, and I'm covering the second half of this double feature on U.S. student support innovations. So let's swipe right in and talk a bit about direct admissions. So to start, what is direct admissions? Direct admissions, aka proactive admissions, automatic admissions, assured admissions, guaranteed admissions, proactive direct admissions is an admissions approach recently developed in the US that defaults graduating high school students into post-secondary admittance by data matching their profiles, which may include transcripts, standardized test scores, and prereqs with institutions' preset eligibility criteria. The process plays out a bit like a dating app, wherein colleges and universities are the ones applying for students. And instead of students applying to institutions and waiting for results, within direct admissions platforms, which may be statewide, institution-specific, or independently operated, students are pre-screened against institutional entrance requirements based on their profile information. And they receive guaranteed acceptance letters for matches that they can then choose to respond to through a greatly simplified process. The history of direct admissions is quite brief. The first large-scale experiment with this method was a statewide admissions initiative in Idaho that was set up in 2015. You may be wondering, as I did, why Idaho? Why 2015? A nationwide study conducted in 2010 had revealed that Idaho's college-going rate came in dead last in the nation. And this result motivated the Idaho government to inject over $8.6 million into post-secondary student success initiatives, which included the direct admissions pilot program. This was all part of its 60% education plan to increase the state percentage of post-secondary graduates above the age of 25 from 42% to 60% by 2025. Idaho's educational infrastructure was also well positioned to accommodate direct admission due to its single board centralized K-16 style education system, relatively compact post-secondary ecosystem, and higher than average state appropriations or government subsidies. So it was in many ways the perfect place to test drive a beta direct admission system. At last count, approximately 87,000 Idahoans have been guaranteed admission to an in-state college or university, and several other states have followed Idaho's example in adopting statewide direct admissions programs. Currently, Hawaii, Minnesota, and Washington have statewide proactive admissions systems in place. South Dakota started a proactive admissions program in 2018, but suspended it in 2021 due to pandemic restrictions. It seems it's not yet relaunched. Georgia, New York, and Wisconsin were poised to start statewide direct admission systems this fall, and Connecticut and Illinois were in the process of legislating statewide direct admissions into place. So interest in direct admissions has also exploded post-pandemic, creating a niche for non-governmental admissions service providers. Some institutions manage their own direct admission systems, while others use third-party providers, such as Concourse, Sage Scholars, specifically their Fast Track program, and Niche. And these are all US-based providers who moved into direct admission services in the last 2.5 years. The largest and most established provider in this nascent marketplace, however, is the Common Application, or Common App, a nonprofit membership organization established in 1978 to support equitable access to post-secondary education through simplified one-stop admissions. Common App implemented direct admissions in March 2021 as a new way of serving its long-standing mission to improve outcomes for historically underserved learners. As Common App is currently in its third year of direct admissions and has access to a national population of over 1 million students' GPAs and SAT, ACT scores, its data have been cross-referenced with National Student Clearinghouse data to complete an early health check of interstate direct admissions and gauge its performance across different applicant populations so that we can start to see what direct admissions can do. And where direct admission shows the most promise is in generating new applications. The direct admissions option outperforms status quo traditional admissions by about 2.7% when it comes to getting high school graduates to apply to colleges and universities. And this is a modest margin, but not insignificant, especially for something that's still quite new. Early research shows that direct admission students are generally more likely to apply to post-secondary, especially to larger institutions, and about twice as likely to apply to an institution that offers them guaranteed admissions, with Black and Latinx applicant populations showing the greatest impacts. Students appear to benefit from direct admissions in a couple of ways. First, there's its structural simplification, which means that applicants are able to bypass time-consuming and confusing parts of the traditional admissions process by not having to complete entrance exams, interviews, references, or complicated forms. Applicants also save money. It's low cost or free of cost to create a profile, and most systems automatically apply fee waivers for qualifying lower income students. In many cases, applicants are alerted to scholarships that can be awarded up front, which can help them decide whether to accept an offer. Something deeper and less obvious that's been happening is the signaling effect, which refers to positive changes in self-perception that many applicants reported. They saw themselves as more accomplished and better prepared for post-secondary transition than they did before they knew that they had a guaranteed spot in college or university. The psychological effect helps explain why marked increases in applications occurred among traditionally underserved populations, as many who would have otherwise not applied were encouraged to do so by a proactive offer. And finally, direct admissions bridges gaps in social and cultural capital that prevents less resourced students from searching for, applying to, and enrolling in college and university. Now, of course, there are also benefits for institutions. Direct admissions is a low-touch, low-cost intervention. Because there isn't anything for them to build or maintain, colleges and universities can expect to pay for far less to be part of a direct admissions system than what they pay for traditional recruitment products and activities. Students who accept direct admissions offers are also a better fit for the institution and better prepared for their post-secondary studies. And direct admissions can support learner diversity by boosting the number of racially minoritized applicants and students. Nevertheless, while direct admissions works as advertised when it comes to increasing the number of applications, what it can't seem to do yet is improve enrollment rates. In the study that evaluated Common App's first 2 years offering direct admissions, the same study that showed improved application rates among Black and Latinx student populations, direct admissions had no appreciable impact on enrollment in any student subgroup. Direct admissions has also shown limited impact on one group of equity-deserving students. Those from lower income households appear to benefit the least from direct admissions interventions. In fact, related research on Tennessee's Universal Free College Program showed that post-secondary access initiatives can actually disproportionately disadvantage lower income students. In other words, it advantages better resource learners at their expense. And what's become clearer through piloting direct admission systems is that affordability remains the most serious barrier to equitable, inclusive higher education. Although direct admissions can minimize some of the systemic frictions that can trip learners up in the search, apply, enroll sequence, it's not a substitute for meaningful financial support. So we'll wrap things up with a look at the past year and why any of this matters right now. It may be the absolute best time or the worst to be expanding direct admissions. Educational attainment, of course, never really goes out of style as a solution to economic and community goals, so it's got a key role to play in post-pandemic recovery. The return on investment for post-secondary graduates is substantial, with 4-year degree completers 24% more likely to be employed and earning, on average, an additional $32,000 USD per year, which translates to more tax paid as well as less pressure on the public purse through improved health outcomes and lower incarceration rates associated with higher per capita incomes. For these reasons, relatively low investment innovations such as direct admissions become important in governmental policymaking focused on encouraging college going. Enrollment started trending downward over a decade ago, but the COVID-19 pandemic is what escalated the problem to a crisis. And what was seen in the US post-secondary landscape in particular are disparities in the distribution of losses, with 4-year selective elite universities showing minimal changes, while 2-year access institutions have experienced full enrollment shock. The concentration of lost enrollment and slowness of recovery in the open access segment of the post-secondary sector highlights an opportunity to apply direct admissions where it can do the greatest amount of good. And if fixing post-COVID enrollment was enough of a puzzle, recent changes in the US political, economic, and cultural climate have complicated recovery in the post-secondary sector. Americans' confidence in higher education pulled a historic low this June, with both ideology and affordability cited as reasons to avoid or delay college going. Furthermore, the US Supreme Court decision in June to end race-conscious initiatives at colleges and universities has far-reaching implications for admissions and financial aid that will put many post-secondary learners at even greater risk. So the need for strategies like direct admissions, which hold at least some potential to make higher education more attainable for more students, has likely never been greater than right now. Direct admissions was imagined as an equity-informed solution to broadening post-secondary participation, and its early wins in improving application rates among some traditionally underserved learner populations are encouraging. How it meets the challenges of the post-pandemic context in the US will determine the future appetite for adopting the strategy in other jurisdictions. Okay, so I've bundled some selected references and some image sources into my slide deck. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have today. Thank you.
And we're back, and we are in the home stretch. I am happy at this point to welcome my colleagues, Dr. Anna Takina, Dr. Elle Ting. How are you guys both doing today?
Thank you.
All right, doing okay, good. Just a reminder to everybody, please put your questions into the chat. I can see them already coming in, so we're going to get to them one by one. So the first question is from a Daft Punk fan, Ernest Kwok. And this question is for you, Anna. He's not familiar with Canada's situation, how much it follows the US, but do you see something quite similar in BC and in Canada in terms of summer melt?
In terms whether the summer melt exists or similar phenomenon exists, yes, it does exist. Whether we know the extent of it publicly, system-wide, no. But I'm sure the institutions are measuring the proportion as they go through the funnel. They are measuring the volume of students, of applicants they get, and how many remain in the institution later in the fall and in the next semester. So I would say institutional studies do exist as well, but they're not just shared publicly.
All right, and then we have a question here for you, Elle. How do proactive admissions result in a better fit?
Okay, the question was from Chad. Thanks, Chad, for the question. The better fit, I think, here refers to the fact that the institutions are making the first move in this, rather than students just sort of distributing lots and lots of applications everywhere and just looking at what sticks. The institutions are making the first move, and they've already data matched at their end. So they're finding students that they already are pretty confident would be a good fit for institutions and then approaching them.
All right, and we have a question from my friend Mark Wallen. He is asking whether direct admissions would have any benefits for open access institutions. So which one of you would like you to take that one on? Elle?
I think that's me. Thanks for the question, Mark. Yeah, I definitely think it would benefit open access institutions. In fact, probably more so than other sort of parts of the sector. Simply because of the demographics they serve and the fact that there are many students that face barriers in that segment. And in fact, direct admissions was designed largely in part to address those barriers and to sort of take them down.
Okay, we have a question from Sam Isari, who asks, how do third-party direct admission providers get compensated? Is their compensation model commission-based like in the private sector?
That's a very good question. Yes, they actually charge a fee. They charge a fee at both ends in most cases of the institutions. I think they charge about $75 to $100 per student that they reach out to. For students, there's sometimes a cost, again, in the same range, $75 to $100, but in most cases for students, it's waived. I think for Common App, it is free. For niche and some of the other sort of smaller providers, there is a fee, but they will often waive if the student is lower income, for instance.
In follow-up to that question, there's a question from Justin who asks if there's any data available that institutions can look at that provide insight into summer melt. So that's actually for you, Anna.
Right, thank you. Well, the institutions do have the number of applications that they receive and the number of the admissions letters that they offer, so they could track that. Also, they have the enrolled numbers in the fall, so they track the headcount of students that show up later. And just measuring that would help assess the sum amount for that specific institution. If we talk about system-wide, I would say, for the common application platform like Education Planner BC, that would be an easy study to do for them because they have the ability to see the number of applications of all institutions that use the Education Planner BC service.
Related, you mentioned EPBC, which is the Common Application System in British Columbia. David Johnson from UFV is asking about, with our significant investment in EPBC, would this break down that relationship with students, parents, and schools?
Thank you for the question. If I understand this correctly, whether the trying to track the applications will break the relationship with students or their parents, I would say it's unlikely. You probably know that in BC, students from K to 12, BC K to 12, all have the personal education number. So those are also tracked in the project that is called Student Transitions Project, which sees how students are transitioning from K to 12 to post-secondary. I would think that perhaps linking the data between Education Planner BC data and the headcount from the Student Transitions Project would support us to share knowledge about the extent of the summer melt system-wide.
The summer melt definition is very specific in the US studies. Do you think it would be feasible or even useful to use the same definition for BC study?
I would advocate in expanding it. A broader definition would include capture more applicants, because in the States it's specifically college intending students. So it is possible to replicate a similar study for a couple of school districts, for example, for measuring students' intentions, and one or several post-secondary institutions. However, for a system-level study in BC, I would suggest keeping whether the student is college intending or not, and track how many students from high school grad class enroll in public post-secondary in the fall.
So do you feel, though, that the factors that prompt the summer melt for students are applicable here at BC post-secondary institutions? Students?
I would say they are pretty much the same. However, I would say the Common Application Platform, Education Planner BC, may alleviate some factors that pertain to the need to learn and explore application on different institutional websites, so that the students do not learn and learn then something else. Especially if student applies to multiple institutions. So uniformity is efficient in this sense.
All right. And we have a question here that I believe is for you, Al. Are the admissions for specific programming or for general admission to the institution? What if a student is thinking of a specific program like engineering, computer science, nursing, etc.? This is from Shelley Butler.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley, for that question. I didn't see any specific references to particular programs, so I believe these are general entry requirements. Bearing in mind that so far, very, very few selective or elite institutions are part of the direct admissions program. So most of these are access, sort of the 2-year colleges that people are going into with more general sort of programs of work.
How applicable would you say is a US-based, US-built solution like direct admissions in Canada or BC, given that the educational infrastructure is quite different in the US system, which is divided generally into 2-year and 4-year institutions?
Yeah, so it was designed in a different system, but one of the key objectives behind it is to improve outcomes for underserved learners, and I think that's bringing more EDI-informed policies and practices into systems is a goal that we have in common with the US.
One of the things that we have noted is that there seems to be very little research on direct admissions because it's so new, and the data that are available right now points to limited levels of improvement. Why do you think so many states are invested in statewide direct admissions?
Yeah, something I didn't point out in my presentation was that there really are only 2 large study reports out right now, and they were both done by the same 2 researchers, Taylor Ottle and Jennifer Delaney, and they wrote on the Idaho system and the college app, sort of the wider pilot, more general project. yeah, there's very little out there, but I think the part that got everyone's attention right away, the state governments, was how little direct admissions cost compared to status quo sort of interventions. And so I noted that the improvement level was pretty small. We're looking at like 2.5%, 3%, but that almost doesn't matter when you consider how little they're paying. So another thing to note is that the pilot that ran in Minnesota, I believe, it ran for 2 years for less than $1 million USD. So if you think about this, $500,000 a year, which is probably less than a lot of universities pay for recruitment interventions just on their own, not to mention like a whole statewide program. So there's significant savings behind it. It's performing better than status quo, so that's what's got everybody's attention this time.
What would you say is the current level of confidence in post-secondary education, and how do you think it's currently trending?
Oh, yeah, this is a big can of worms. It's been generally trending downwards pretty steadily since the 1970s, actually. But we saw a very, very like precipitous decline right around the time that COVID struck. Surprise, surprise. And the Gallup poll that I referred to is done once a year, or they have data going back to the 70s. So that's where I found it from. But the confidence level across many institutions has never been lower than this June when they released those findings. And education, interestingly, was among the bottom 3 institutions. So the institutions, societal institutions that people had the least confidence in were higher education, big business, and tech. So those 3 rated the lowest. For anybody who's interested, the highest rated were small business, military, and the police. So that, I guess, tells you something for comparison. But yeah, I think the fact that Americans' confidence in like their societal institutions just fell that quickly during COVID, it just speaks more to how people's perspective changed at that time. I think it speaks to their frustration, and it speaks to the difficulties that everybody faced in that span of time, which I think is something we can all relate to.
Definitely. All right. Well, I'm taking a look at the chat. It looks like we have responded as best we can to all the questions that are in there. So what I will do now is call this session to a wrap. So I want to thank you, both Anna and Elle, for your presentations. This was really exciting. We're going to be putting these sessions available online. I have also included a PDF into the Whova session of both of these sessions. It's included in the session description. And we are going to take a 5-minute break, and then we are going to put a bow on day 1 of JAM with some last-minute instructions, and then we will get ready for day 2. So come back at 2:30, and we will see you there. Thank you.